Welcome back to another episode of the After the Timeout podcast in partnership with the Illinois Basketball Coaches Association. Today we are talking system basketball with Mike Ricks, head women's basketball coach at Birmingham Southern. We talked with Coach Ricks about his own unique version of the system, creating turnovers, good shots and bad shots, playing up tempo, and implementing the system when you first take over a program. As always, thank you for listening to the After the Timeout podcast.
All right, Coach, we start every episode with our opening tip. And for our opening tip segment, we wanted to really start off with, you kind of adapted to more of a quote unquote system, which is really playing fast and playing a lot of people and creating turnovers. So we just kind of wanted to start with you of, take us through your journey, why you decided to start with that style and why you decided to go that direction.
Sure. Well, for the 7 or 8 years before we started running the system, we were a, quote unquote, traditional basketball team. We played a lot of half court man-to-man. We were a triangle offense team, the entire time I've been at Birmingham Southern until we implemented the system. We've been really, really blessed, even dating back to my time at the University of St. Thomas, to have some really great post players that we would want to build an offense around. And so, we did that when we got to Birmingham Southern, and we, seemed to have, 2 or 3 of the best kids in the league over a stretch of time. And probably culminating with Emily Olson, who graduated in 2020, right? The spring that everybody got sent home for COVID was the end of her senior year. And she was an all-time great. The second leading scorer in program history, the leading rebounder, leading shot blocker, just an all-program kid. And, we graduated her. And then as we were planning for the next year, we really didn't have another post that we wanted to build our offense around. And, we had, talented kids in those positions, but not a cornerstone. And the strength of our team started to become our guards and our forwards. And so I guess our numbers a little bit, we had a big recruiting class coming in, and we, excuse me, we were sitting around the office at some point that spring, probably right before we got sent home. And we were joking about needing to make a change. I really didn't think that, excuse me, I'm so sorry, that we would have a chance to be as successful if we would have played the same way. There were some really talented teams in our league at the time in Oglethorpe and Rhodes. And I thought that if we had stuck with what we'd done, we would struggle a little bit. And so I've always been really fascinated with up-tempo basketball. I joked with my assistant, Alan McGowan. I said, we should consider running the system. And we laughed about it. And then we left it alone for a couple of weeks. I don't think either one of us thought we were really serious because, like I said, we're both fairly basketball traditionalists, and we like watching film, and we like the intricacies of the game. And we kind of came back to it a little while later. And once again, it was the same thought process. And so, this time we started looking into it. The system, I know a lot of coaches, it's kind of one of those things that it sounds like it could be a good idea, but it's really risky and everything. And it's fun, but maybe not for everyone. And so, we called a lot of coaches, and they were very gracious with their time. And we read the book that Coach Porter wrote. And the more we learned about it, the more we found that it could be beneficial for the basketball part of it, but also just for our program in general. And like you said, playing more kids, a little bit more exciting of a style, and obviously, just drawing interest to our program. And so as we researched it, we kind of made that decision to go in that direction, and we presented it to our players. And in talking to them later on, a year later, when we first brought it up, I think they thought, oh, okay, we're going to play a little faster. But we'll see if coach really wants to stick with it. And we sure stuck with it. And, the first year was interesting. Obviously we were in a COVID year, we were very young, and I think it was as drastic of a change as you could undergo in terms of style. And then Alan and I were still, getting our feel for it as well. And so second year we were much, much better, much improved. And, but it's been fun. So that's kind of how we landed on that a little bit. It wasn't a decision that we came to lightly. And I think that, there are still, during that first year, especially, there were moments where, I think our kids were a little unsure. I can tell you the moment that we were unsure is in our first game. We didn't get to play until mid-December. And our administration was, we were one of the first D3 teams to play that year. And our administration, somehow, I don't even know how we did it, we hosted a tournament in December with 5 other teams, and we played 3 games in 3 days. And so we get into our first game and we're down 14-0. I mean, inside of 3 minutes, and I'm looking at my assistant and we're both kind of thinking the same thing, what have we done? And, we end up by about mid-second quarter tying it up, and it's a good game back and forth. And I think in the fourth quarter, in the final 6 minutes, we scored about 36, 37 points and won the game, 113-90 something. And that was kind of a big buy-in moment for our kids, I think, and just for everyone. And within a couple of days, we had people calling us to get on the pass list because they wanted to see what we were doing. And of course, I had a few phone calls from, other coaches around the conference, my former boss, Todd Smith at St. Thomas, because we really didn't share with anybody what we were doing at the time. We kind of just wanted to show up to our first game, our first scrimmage, and hey, this is what we're doing. And I'm sure we caught a lot of people off guard and by surprise, but it's been a fun journey, and we're excited to get ready for year 3.
Yeah, just show up and give a little surprise factor, right? Don't worry about that, Scott, especially in that COVID year.
Right, a little bit, and the team, whoever we didn't scrimmage anybody, we didn't play anybody, and so if it's me and I'm preparing for a game to open the season and I don't know anything about our opponent, I'm going to look at the coach and see what they do. For the most part, what they've done over the course of their career, because we're all creatures of habit. We don't change very much. And so, in speaking with the coach that we played against after the game, she was very familiar with the system because she was at Greenville for a while. And, so right away, she said, "Coach, I can't believe you did that." And she was gracious about it, obviously. And she has a great program, but, we were not trying to give people an opportunity to spend their summer preparing for us and everything like that. And obviously, I mean, we only won 5 games that year, but it was fun just to do something different, to see our kids involved. I think that's my favorite part, is just seeing more players involved in the outcome of games and being active stakeholders in the process of our program.
So you guys led everybody, men, women, D1, D3 in turnovers force last year. Oh, you're almost 33. Got a 2-part question here. First, how do you, I guess, begin every year? Obviously you have returners and things like that, but maybe even at the beginning and then now, developing that mindset of being that aggressive with your players, right? Because it's something different than everybody else does, right? Most high schools don't do it, right? They're running this or motion or whatever it may be. Now you have to flip that mindset. So, maybe even in recruiting, how do you develop that mindset for aggressive players?
Well, I think, it starts in practice. And one of our goals, I think my first year we forced about 28 turnovers a game, and we gave up a lot of points. And so one of our goals going into last year was we want to increase our turnover number by 5 per game. And our goal has always been 33. That's one of our 5 goals. But we wanted to improve by 5 forced turnovers a game. And so we placed a really heavy emphasis on doing breakdown drills in our press work at practice, like almost every day ad nauseum, to the point where I think our kids probably got really tired of it by the end of it. But one of the, and it's a constant drilling. Now, I don't know if there's anything special that we do that we haven't stolen from somebody else, but probably the first drill that we put in is a 3-on-3 lag drill, where we usually have someone guarding the basketball on inbound, and we're in denial of the front two people in a press. And obviously if people change alignments, then we change alignments as well. And we work on those denials. This is a quick drill, so we get a lot of reps in. We want to trap the first pass. And then, one of the differences in our press, which is, I think, fairly typical for system teams, is rather than allow a reverse pass or a lag pass, what we call it, we want to take away the lag pass. We'd rather our opponent throw the ball forward to create pace. And so, the whole purpose of the drill is to either work on getting deflections, work on getting a 5-second count, work on getting a steal off that initial entry pass, going to trap it hard and giving that weak side defender that opportunity to rotate to take away the lag. And so in that drill, we're successful, number one, if we do any of those things as far as getting a deflection or a steal or a 5 count. If we take away the lag and that person is able to throw it out of the trap and hit the person in the middle of the press, we still consider that a win because they're going forward and creating pace. And we also, in a 5-on-5 situation, are hoping that the next two guys in our press are sitting on that middle pass. Our goal is to try to leave the furthest person from the basketball open. And so that was a big one for us as far as teaching aggressiveness. And from there, we go into a 3-on-4 press drill where we give the defense one extra person. And so, every time there, all of a sudden you're getting guys trapping, taking away lag. And then that next defender is working on being an interceptor and anticipating, where's the ball going to go next and getting steals. And we really try to challenge our players in those drill, and especially in that drill. You're outnumbering the offense by 1. You have 4 defenders. Ball should never see half if you're doing it right. And so there's little things that each person is working on in that drill, but that's another good one. And then, when we were a man-to-man team, we always talked about being solid. I think a lot of man-to-man coaches are wanting to be solid, keep everything in front of you, don't take chances, don't gamble, because then you expose your whole defense. And in the system, we're encouraging our kids to gamble, to take risks, to take chances. If we go into the locker room at halftime and we're not halfway to our turnover number, then our conversation centers around, guys, we got to take more chances. Hey, we need to be more aggressive. And so we really try to, at practice, anytime someone goes for a steal and misses, to celebrate that effort, because that's what we want. And we want those guys who are like, man, I almost had it, I saw it, and I just couldn't get there. Or, they lunged through a passing lane and now the ball's in the open court and we've created pace. And so, those two things I think were really big as far as us just improving our turnover number. I think our kids being in the second year and having some returners who get it, was big. And then, especially second year for myself in teaching it and just seeing things a little bit differently after having a season in it was also helpful. But then, that first recruiting class, we had already pretty much gotten done recruiting for that first year before we decided to switch to the system. And our kids in that, they adapted to it. That wasn't what we recruited. A lot of them telling them what we were going to do. And I think it worked out in a lot of their favor because a lot of those kids were on the floor. But just having that year of experience, I think, helped. But then the kids that we recruited that were freshmen last year were all recruited to the system. And we were really fortunate, I think, to have some talented freshmen who were athletic and quick and wanted to play that way. And so just a combination of a lot of different things, and I still don't think that we've even reached 75% of what we can be capable of in it. We primarily have focused on running the on press, which is the most aggressive press, trapping, taking away ball reversal and so on. But there's other layers. There's run and jump things that you can do. There's, just different looks in the press that I think we struggled to adjust to as we taught them. And then, I think obviously, from a coaching standpoint, we can do a much better job of teaching it and then giving them an opportunity to be in those presses more, because the good teams in our league are going to figure it out. And really every team in our league is well coached. So if we don't have another layer or two that we can get to, I think we're going to struggle. But I personally think we should be able to average 33 forced turnovers a game from here until whenever, if we do it right, if we're aggressive enough.
So I wanted to do a quick follow-up before we move on to the next question. And the follow-up has to do with fouling. I think obviously you said with a lot of coaches that play man or zone or whatever that may not be as aggressive to create turnovers, it's contain the ball, limit the fouls. For you guys in terms of fouling, for me, at least in particular, we want to be more aggressive on defense. I kind of like when our fouls are 7, 8, 9.5, because it tells me we're being a little bit more aggressive. What's your guys' kind of philosophy on fouls?
And we don't want to foul. We foul more than we'd like to. And then, so I'll say this, we really don't want to foul because we don't want to slow the game down. We want to create that pace, but a byproduct of being as aggressive as we are is we're going to foul some. We're going to be in traps, and we're going to be too handsy. We're going to be denying someone, and we're going to be too physical, or bump and run with someone on the sideline and be too physical there. So we foul more than we should. Our men's coach jokes with me that I don't know if he's joking actually, but I think their games on average started about 20 minutes later when they followed us. And obviously that's not something that I like to hear, because, we don't want to impact anyone else with our style of play. But, as a rule, we'd rather not foul. We have had some games where, we're 40, both teams shooting 45, 50 free throws. And we're just looking at each other like, can't believe how long this thing is taking. And I think sometimes that just depends on, and I don't mean this negatively towards officials, but the crew and how they're calling it, because one game, like we've been in a tournament and one day we're shooting 50 free throws and the next day we're barely getting to 20, and same with our opponent, and not really noticing that different of a level of our aggressiveness. And so I think sometimes it depends on how the game is being called a little bit. But as a rule, we'd rather not. The ones that I'm not okay with are, we've given up the other team just got a defensive rebound. They're not even looking in the direction of the basket, and we're going to foul them. Like we've already we should concede possession, and we should be getting into our missed shot press. The ones where we have someone 93 feet from their own basket and we've got them in a good trap and we bail them out with a foul. Those types of fouls drive me crazy. The ones that I wish we'd pick up a few more of is just being aggressive going to the offensive glass. Like I could live with those, as opposed to a foul in a trap or, something like that, because that's probably our emphasis going into this year is we have to be a better offensive rebounding team. I personally think we should average 25 offensive rebounds a game. And when we talk in the spring about what are our goals going into next year, it's other than try to win a conference championship, which is always the goal. It's lead the country in scoring, lead the country in turnovers forced, and lead the country in offensive rebounds per game. And I think if we can do those three things, we're going to be pretty good. So, but those are the foul things that we talk about. We don't spend a whole lot of time talking about, we should be fouling more. We really should be fouling less, I think.
So I wanted to get into now just steals. You were third in the country in steals, 17.7. When you're talking to your team about creating steals, are you talking to them more about creating them on the ball, off the ball? And then kind of what are the first one or two things you're telling them once you've secured the steal, do blank?
Well, I don't think we've ever really talked about if we want steals on the ball or off the ball. I'm not really picky. I'll take a steal wherever we can get it. I think realistically, we think that a lot of our steals are going to come from off the ball. And this is why I think we can average more steals and force more turnovers. If the front people in our press are doing their job, good trap, taking away ball reversal, then you have two guys that are interceptors up there and having these great opportunities to get steals. And on film, I think there's still a lot of opportunities that we're missing to get those steals, either because our two guys that aren't involved in the trap and the lag are sometimes a little too far back instead of really up and being aggressive, going for those next two closest passing lanes. I think a lot of that is just the human nature of there's a guy behind me. if they get it out, we're probably going to give up a quick layup, and so on. And so, just encouraging those guys to stay up and involved in the play a little bit more. So I think off the ball is probably where we're going to get a lot of our steals. We hardly ever get them, just one-on-one with a guy. It's going to be deflecting a pass, entry pass, or getting a great first trap. And so, that's the first part of it. What was the rest of the question?
No, I just was saying, after you create the steal, what is one or
Right.
two things you say to your kids? As soon as we create the turnover, we're in transition offense now. What are the keys?
Well, I think it's evaluating, what your numbers look like, because, if it's a steal, in the front court, and you've got numbers, we're attacking and trying to get to the rim or trying to get a three as quickly as we can, especially while we have numbers. If it's a steal that's more on the backside of the press, we have organized transition lanes that will run, but we also really try to give our kids the freedom of, if you're a guard and you get a steal, you don't need to look for the one, so to speak. Let's attack and let's see what we can get. Really, our offense is a dribble drive offense with some passing and cutting, and anyone can initiate that offense. So even if we explore something in a 2-on-1 or just any numbers advantage type situation, from there we can flow into our offense if need be. So we really just want to attack while the numbers are in our favor.
All right, so let's build on that offense then. Obviously, you're shooting threes, right? You had third most 3-point attempts, but you shot a lot of free throws as well. I think you're fifth in free throw attempts.
Right.
So when you're talking to your players, how do you encourage that balance, right? Because
Sure.
I'm sure it'd be very easy just to, hey, pitch ahead, let it fly, right? Pitch ahead,
Right.
let it fly. So, what are some of the things you do to encourage the balance of, we want to hit threes and shoot threes, but we also want to put pressure on the rim.
Right. We have our 5 number goals, 2 of them as far as shooting. The first one is we want to get 90 shots up in a game. And then the second one is we want half of those to be threes. So we want to shoot 45 or more threes per game. And so, we're not sitting there talking about, a lot of mid-range shots and everything, but, and a lot of system coaches that we talk to they hate mid-range. They're like NBA guys. They hate mid-range. I'm for anything that keeps pace and anything that our kids feel like is in rhythm as far as playing the game. And so if we have a guy who gets run off the 3-point line and hits a 15-footer, I'm not going to get mad about that. Because the biggest thing is that we want to get a shot off in 12 seconds. So, to me, that's part of the conversation. Really, our conversation centers more around just the numbers. And so, if we're in a locker room situation at halftime and we've only shot 17 threes in the first half, and we talk about getting more threes up. I think our kids have done a really good job of balancing it without us over talking it. One of the things that we talk about in practice, that we talk about with recruits, is that we've given up so much control of in-game decisions, whereas before we're calling a play or running our triangle offense every time, telling our kids to slow it down. Now we're not really calling plays. The only time we call plays is occasionally on dead balls, and we call those referee handles, but they're still quick hitters where we're trusting our kids with the offense. And so, we talk about the balance as far as just get to the rim, shoot a three. And I think our kids are smart enough basketball players to know that if they drive it and the defense collapses on them, that, we should be able to drive and kick and get an open shot. And so, maybe we should talk about that more, but offensively, I feel like we've done okay the first 2 years, and as far as putting up points and everybody kind of understanding. And then it's some kids playing to their strengths. We've got a few guys that, man, if you're open for three, we want you to shoot it every time you touch it. We've got a few that, are stronger drivers, and they know that. And I think that their opportunities to get to the rim are there if we drive and kick once or twice. And then it's just about trusting those guys with the decisions that they make. And we feel pretty confident about that. You know, one of the other things that I can't remember if we led the country in or we were close to was our turnover margin. And which to me says for playing over 100 possessions per game, you know, to have the best turnover margin, you know, to me says something about the way our kids are able to control the game and make those decisions on their own. And you know, we did this, you know, with one senior the first year and two seniors this year. So we've been extremely young, and to have them be able to do that, I'm confident in going through that process with them as they get older and older, to trust them with that. And so it's been fun to watch, and to give them that control has been, you know, something that, you know, I have certainly had to get used to. But I think that's a big part of it. As far as speed, is I don't want them to overthink it. If they're open, I want them to shoot it. And if they have a chance to rack it, I want them to rack it. But we really try as a rule not to give them too much to think about, because that was one of the things about our change is when we were running triangle, and, you know, triangle, it can be a pretty complex offense. You could see certain kids in that offense just slow down because the wheels are turning and they're trying to remember what they're supposed to do next. I throw it here. Okay, I've got to go screen here, and I can slip, or I can pop out, or I can do all of these things, and it just slows them down. And so we want the game to be instinctual for our players, and we want for them to trust their instincts. And so there's a lot of times where we'll have a couple of possessions in a row that just aren't very good. And I think that's part of the process of letting them grow and learn how to do that on their own without the coach calling plays and putting them in spots all the time.
So I want to build on that a little bit, because I was having a conversation with another coach this summer just about playing fast. And, you know, he was watching us play, and he actually said, he goes, "You don't really say very much." And I said, you know, it's because I don't want them just constantly hearing me, and I want them to make quicker decisions. You know, in your opinion, why do you feel like a lot of coaches have trouble giving up some of that control? I know I did when I first started kind of playing quick. I'm sure you did as well. You know, what do you think builds off of that?
Well, I don't know if I can speak for other coaches, but I know for me, you know, I felt like, you know, that's kind of how I grew up doing it and how I came up coaching doing it. And, you know, we had some success playing that way. You know, we won a couple of conference championships. We went to the NCAA tournament, and you know, it's kind of how basketball is, right? For the most part, maybe not in the pros as much, but in college and certainly in high school. You know, I don't know. I think for when I was younger, is probably I wanted to show how much I knew as far as running offense and everything. And the older that I got, you know, you could see where when things broke down, you know, you're struggling to get a shot off, and you're, you know, forcing something up with 4 seconds on the shot clock and everything. And so and then, you know, I'm an OCD guy. I like to be in control of a lot. So for me, I know that's one of the reasons why it was a challenge. I thought it was going to be a bigger challenge than it was. Maybe because I was just enjoying doing something different and watching our kids do something different. So, you know, for me, it's just because that's kind of what I was used to and what I was taught. And I think giving up control anytime like that is and can be scary for coaches, because when we're sitting here, you know, you got to win a little bit if you want to keep your job, probably. You know, you want, you know, you don't want the score to get lopsided, and certainly not, you know, when it's not in your favor. And so, you know, all of those things, you know, when you're coaching every possession and calling plays, you know, you can somewhat, you know, control, but you're really giving it up when you play like we play, and it can go a lot of different ways. But I think that's where our kids are developing more as players and developing quicker because of those opportunities to grow, and we don't find ourselves stuck at the end of a shot clock anymore. Well, we wouldn't, but we find ourselves able to get good shots and quality shots on almost every possession.
So obviously you've talked about pace a lot. You know, and again, it's different than a lot of, especially you said, you mentioned you have a young team. So when you're talking about your off the court strength and conditioning, is there certain benchmarks you're looking for? How do you help your players prepare for that pace and that style? Obviously you're subbing and doing that, but you still need a certain level of conditioning to go at the pace and create the pace you want. So what are some of the things you're doing off the court to help your players prepare for that style?
Sure. Well, we have a really good strength coach in Jim Hamner, and he does a great job with the kids in the preseason. We give summer workout packets to our kids, and a byproduct of the system, I think, and when you have 15 players that are getting quality minutes in games, is our work and during non-required times has gone up because our players know, like, I'm part of it. And so when we're in school, we see more kids that are in the gym getting shots, and they're telling us, hey coach, I'm doing my summer workouts, and asking us questions about the summer workouts. And that involves, shooting and lifting and running. I think they know that if they're not fit, they can't play. So we're not just throwing any 15 out there. If you can't sustain your effort during your shift, it's going to be very hard for you to play. So that's a big thing. And they know that that's going to be, if there's one or two reasons why you might not play for us, and that is one of them. Probably the other is if you're not a good teammate, you don't work hard. Otherwise, we recruit players that we feel like can go out there and help us in our current style of play. And so I think they take that part seriously. From August until October, our kids are working really hard to get in shape and to be physically fit. And so, that's a big part of it. I think in the fall for any basketball team is the conditioning element off the court, because, you want to be ready when October 15th comes around. And then probably one of the other things that we do is we do a boot camp, and we call it Camp 5, and it's a week of 5 a.m. workouts where, our kids are up, and it's zero basketball stuff, but they're conditioning, hard conditioning. And we've researched that stuff. We've talked to a lot of different coaches who do boot camps and come up with different ideas, but there's this shared suffering that goes on during that week where they're getting stronger as a group, and it's kind of the culmination of the work that they've done in the preseason with the strength coach and so on, as we lead into official practice. And so there is a heavy element on that. I would say we probably don't run as much during the actual season, October to March when we're in practice, because we practice at such a high tempo and there's a big scrimmage element to what we're doing. And so we feel like our kids are getting enough work in, early, like before we start playing, people will run at the end and everything. But once we get into games and you're playing, Friday, Saturday, and then you got to, turn around and leave the next Thursday, we might have one or two really hard days in there, but if you practice right, you don't really have to spend as much time on that, as far as the running and everything goes. And I think our kids know that. They might disagree with me, and they probably run more than I remember, but it's a pretty heavy element to it. And we preach about staying hydrated, and even though you're on a college campus with cafeteria and maybe not limited meal options, but certainly you're not cooking for yourself, about making good choices as far as what you're eating and everything like that. I think I'll go into it. But by and large, our kids are pretty serious about it, and they try to make good choices in all of those areas. And so, but the fitness is such a huge aspect to it, I think, to really be in any college program, but especially for us.
So we kind of wanted to get into a little bit of, within the system. You had 13 players last year that played in double-digit minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever have conversations where players come to you and you kind of, in the last answer, talked about, they all know they're part of it, but do you ever have players that are like, coach, I could play a little bit more, or coach, I know there was only the 30-second 1 minute run with this group, I can play a little bit more? Do you ever have those kids that would just want to play a little bit longer than their shift?
We do. and they're always positive conversations. I think they all understand why we sub the way that we sub, because they also will tell us that when your shift goes too long, it's one of the worst feelings, because then you're out there and you're not able to press effectively and so on. But we do have some kids that are capable of going longer than the shift. And I think as we grow and evolve in the system, we have to, as coaches, keep looking for ways to keep our best players on the floor a little bit more, because we balance our shifts out. So very, very rarely are our top 5 or 7 guys getting run together. We have kids who joke about never getting to play with another kid on the team for a whole season, and so on like that. And while they understand it, I don't think they're wrong to want those extra couple of minutes, or to want our top 5 guys to be on the floor. And I think what it forces Alan and I to do a little bit is to evaluate different ways that we can do lineups. Especially, and it's worked for us by and large. We've made significant improvements to go from 5 wins the first year to 13 in the second year, and so on. And so it gives us things to look at, things to evaluate, just like anything else. And I'm happy that we have the type of relationships with our players that they feel like they can, come and sit down and have those conversations. And so, like I said, as we learn the system better and figure out different ways to do things, we're always tweaking and trying to find what fits best with each group that we have. I think the one thing that, and we haven't heard this yet, but I know other system coaches have heard, is if a player were to come in and say, coach, I'm averaging 10 points a game and in 13 minutes. If I played 26 minutes, I'd average 20, and that's not really how it works, because if you play 26 minutes, we wouldn't be in the system. And so, I think everyone understands that, but I do think that getting our best kids on the floor together more is something that we've got to look at, and just figuring out ways to keep guys on just a little bit longer. It's such a fine line, though, because you could say, hey, we want to keep someone on for 30 seconds longer, but it's really funny how quickly that 30 seconds can turn into an extra minute if there's not a whistle. And then you've kind of hurt that kid for their next shift. And so there's a lot of, we could do that, but you got to think about this. And so, but there's teams who do that a lot of different ways, who sub different ways. They just, instead of doing shifts, they just sub. And so far the shifting is what we've been most comfortable with. But like I said, we look at everything, and we want to do what's best for our roster too. I think sometimes it might depend on how many kids we're going to play too. Yet last year we played 15. This year, we hope it's 15 again. But if not enough kids have earned that opportunity, then we play 13 or 12, and then you'll see some minutes go up for some guys as well. Whereas if maybe it wouldn't be 15 extra seconds in a shift, but it might be 2-3 extra minutes over the course of a game, because we're playing less people. So, we evaluate it all as we go, and we'll see. But yeah, interesting, because we have had those conversations.
I want to do one quick follow-up before I get to the next one. So within those shifts then, like, are you looking for a certain dynamic? Like, I need 2 of these type of guys, 1 of these type of guys, you know what I mean? To kind of make it, balance it out and have kind of the flow you want. Or right. Are you saying, well, I think these guys play together? How do you kind of balance those shifts then?
So, we got to have a strong point guard in each shift, number one. And I feel like we've been really fortunate to have that. We've got a great one in senior Alex Lewis coming back, who just really gets how to run her shift without us having to say anything. She knows who's on the floor with her, who needs the ball where, and what their strengths are. And that type of senior leadership is hard to replace. We got to have shooting on the floor to space the floor. And I feel like we've got to have at least 1 or 2 kids that can rack it as well. And then we've played a lot of 4 out, 1 in. So we've had a 5 on the floor with our groups over the last 2 years. And I think we still will continue to do that. And our fives for us are probably, fours that can play inside a little bit, but you've got to be able to run the floor. You've got to be able to be at the top of our press. You've got to be a super high energy guy. And so, that's really, we try to balance it out. So there's not a whole lot of drop off from one shift to the next, as opposed to, hey, this is our starting five and these are the next five. It's really, we try to tell our kids, if you're in that top 10, you're pretty much starting, because you have a group that'll be out there for the tip, but then at 9:15 in that first quarter, someone's going to the table to get in the game. And so, that's really what we talk about, just having that balance. Got to have someone that can score it. And we feel like we've got a ton of talent. We had great talent last year. I think we might even have more this year as far as guys that can shoot it. A few guys that can get their own shot, guys that can get to the rim off of closeouts. And I think we're deeper at the point guard spot. We'll probably run some more 5-out this year, just because our fives are mobile and I think they can do more. And we feel like sometimes when they're roaming the baseline in that dribble drive offense, that they get lost a little bit sometimes, and we want to give them some opportunities to get touches. So.
All right, so let's take that now outside of playing and recruiting, right?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned you're kind of the genesis of going to the system was that you didn't really have a true post, right? You had graduated a post. So when you're going out and looking for recruits, like kind of, now that you've gone this, what are you looking for? Like, what are some of the characteristics you're looking for in a player? Maybe besides, obviously you got to be able to shoot it, right? And things like that, but maybe some of the outside the box things that would lend to fitting into your system.
Sure. Well, I say, as far as posts go, Emily Olsen could have played in the system. I mean, she was mobile, athletic, could run all day long. I don't think she would have liked it as much because, she was a great back to the basket, great passer too. So we wanted the ball in her hands because she was one of our best decision makers too. But if we can find, people like that, then I think it's worth our time to install some more post ups into our offense. But she would have been terrific in any system. But when we're looking now, I think it opens recruiting up for us even more because, there's very, very few kids like an Emily Olsen out there that are 6'2", that can go get you a basket and so on. Excuse me. I think there's so many more guards and forwards out there that don't get a chance because there's just more of them. And so we feel like it's opened things up for us. But, we always are looking for high motor kids, kids that always seem to be around the basketball. I mean, when you watch them play enough, you can kind of figure out who they are. And, a million kids out there that can shoot it, that can get to the rim, that have a good basketball IQ, that are just looking for an opportunity. And so, bonus points for us if you're a kid that dives on the floor, if you're a kid that takes charges, just like with anybody. But that motor is so huge. And I think the more versatile you are, can you shoot it and drive it? Are you able to, find open teammates when defense collapses on you? And I think maybe outside of basketball, most important is what kind of teammate and person are you? Because we really, I think, have a pretty great team culture, team environment right now with a lot of guys that like to have a good time, that want to work hard at basketball and make it enjoyable. And bringing in someone that's talented that maybe isn't coachable to that mix isn't going to work for us. I've learned that lesson the hard way too many times. And so we really are mindful of that as well. But, I think, being in Division III, it's also got to be an academic and financial component, obviously. But, we go through the process with people and try to figure that out. And I think the idea of the way that we play is appealing to people. 5 of our freshmen last year, I think, were double-digit minute guys. And that to be able to tell kids that, if you were to come here, unless you don't work hard, unless you're a bad teammate, unless you're not in shape, like you're probably going to have an opportunity to be on the floor from your freshman year until your senior year, and how quickly they'll develop and how much more involved they'll feel. Those are all things that have helped us in recruiting tremendously, I think.
So before we move on to our last two segments, I wanted to touch on for, our high school coaches that are out there listening, what are some things, maybe they're not ready to go, right, from traditional all the way to fully bought in. But maybe what are some things they can do to kind of start to implement the system with their players?
Well, I think pressing is big. I think that's a really big one. If you're not going to turn the offense over to your players as much, I think, the press can create extra opportunities for you. I can tell you this: if I was going to coach high school basketball again, I would run the system. Now, I went to a high school with 4,000 kids, so we had a lot of people playing basketball there. But I can just kind of picture this: if I was ever going to coach in high school and I was at a bigger high school and we had enough kids in the program to have a varsity and a JV and maybe even a freshman team, we'd be running the system. And I would do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you can force 33 turnovers per game in a college basketball game, I think you can force more in high school. Number two, the involvement of the players. And I know, in speaking with a lot of high school coaches, just how many kids make it through all 4 years. But having those kids involved playing from their freshman year on, getting used to that mindset, to shooting the basketball, and making decisions, to me, I think it's a fun way to play. And then if I'm at a big high school, I'm selling the heck out of that to our student section, and trying to figure out some type of way. We talk about here, and we didn't do it as much last year as we did the first year, like 6 or 7 times to score over 100 points. Can we partner up with a local business for something for the people that come to the game? Just anything to promote it. So it's easy to promote. It's different. You're going to see a lot of back and forth action. And so I'd start with pressing, I think, for me. But the one thing that I really believe is, if you're going to be a system team, you've got to be all in on it. Because, we've started other years when we played the way we used to play, and we'd say, okay, we want to play faster this year. So that means we want our fours to get it out quick and our ones to get it on the run. And inevitably we'd walk the ball up or jog the ball up and get set. It's just, I've never had success personally coaching a group that, hey, we're going to fly it up and then we're going to run offense. But for some reason, that's the way we play. Like we pick that part up quick. Our fours get it out, our ones get it up, and we're up the floor in a hurry. And so I think you've got to be all in on it. That's my stance, is that it's very hard to do in pieces. You could be a press team and in an offense, more of a ball control team offensively, I suppose. But if I was a high school coach, I'd be all in on it. I mean, and that's because I'm all in on it now. I don't know if I would have said that 3 years ago, but I love it. It's been re-energizing, I think, for me and for, my assistant, Alan McGowan. Has been re-energizing for both of us after being two guys that have done the same type of thing for so long. It's fun. It's fun to start practice and shoot. We spend at least 30 minutes a day shooting. We turn music on. I think the kids love it because shooting is such a priority. And we never used to spend that much time. And I don't even have a good reason why, other than we spent so much time breaking things down defensively and running offense and doing all this stuff. And now we're shooting. Our game day shoot arounds, basically just coming in, turning on music, getting shots. We scout press offense and we scout baseline out of bounds, and we don't look at anything else anymore, which is also, it's kind of nice to not be up till 2 a.m. the night before a game. And it makes it sound like we're not working as hard, which isn't true. I think we're just focusing our energies in other areas. But I'm all in if I'm a high school coach. That's my probably number one, and number two would be working on being aggressive and pressing.
So as we get into our last two segments, we call this one 30-second timeout. It's your platform to kind of discuss whatever you want, whether it be family or your program or something you want our listeners to know, or turn it on us and ask us a question. This segment, you're kind of the
All
driver.
right, well, I don't think I have very much here. I know, I think probably just a couple of things. Number one is, I think a big shout out to our players over the last 2 years for buying into doing something completely different, especially for the ones that had been with us for a couple of seasons doing what we did before, because all of a sudden you're heading into, and I think that the girls probably that were the seniors for us the last 3 years or 2 years, Leah Middleton, Cassidy Quintana, and Josie Wannemuller, they were all rotation guys in our triangle offense, and they're moving into their senior and junior year, and we make this great change. And then we've had these conversations about, it's like they're a freshman again, because not like there's a single drill that they can say, oh, all right, I know what I'm doing. I can help the younger kids to learn, or just look like I know what I'm doing. And to those kids for buying in and doing something completely different on the backside of their careers, I think was one of the big reasons why we've been as successful as we've been. And one of our girls, Cassidy Quintana, who was a senior last year, she was a film and media major, and she did for her senior project a documentary. It's like 15 minutes long. It's about the switch that we made, and we saw on YouTube. She did player interviews and had people filming at different practices and in the locker room before and after games and everything. And so she put this film together, and it's really interesting because you do get a little bit of the player perspective as far as the system goes, and it's different than the coach perspective, as it should be. But I think those kids really helped just launch us into a new era of basketball. And they could have. I've heard of system coaches who had to switch because their players, don't buy into it. And I think we have great kids in our program. So a shout out to those guys, but really just to our players for making it fun and for working hard to do something that they didn't do in high school. No one's really played like this, until they got here. So that's a big one. And I think also to just the community of system coaches is really opening. We're I don't even know if I'm if I'm part of the we yet, because some of those guys have been doing it for a long time, but I've found those guys to be really open to sharing and just excited that there's another one of them out there, maybe. And that was a perk for us as we started to make the decision to switch to the system, is guys like Doug Porter and Mark Hart, and all of the coaches in the system basketball community who were so opening of their arms to us and helpful with answering different questions. And then probably lastly, being a coach's wife is never easy. I don't know if this is shout outs, 30-second shout outs, I guess, but my wife has, I think she's enjoyed the system more as well. She says, I'm happier when I come home. I'm not quite as stressed about everything, but just being a coach's wife in general, I think is maybe one of the toughest things that, a person could have to do, because, there's times when you're in the middle of the season and you're at home, but you're not actually mentally at home. Your mind is elsewhere, and your energies are elsewhere. And to have the patience and love that she has for me, I'm a pretty lucky guy. So I get to do what I love, and, kind of found, a second chapter of a coaching career, just doing something completely different with people that I love to be around, and everything has been really special. So that's my 30-second timeout.
Love it. That's totally awesome. All right. So now we're going to flip the script a little bit, have a little fun. Quick hitters, throw random questions at you, answer them however you feel best here.
Okay.
Your favorite food in Alabama, maybe something unique, maybe an Alabama thing or in your area that
Sure.
like, I gotta have this, you know what I mean?
I'll pump Birmingham here. Birmingham has a great restaurant and food scene. So if you're a foodie, Birmingham is a great place to be. and I'm from Houston. It's not that Houston isn't, but Houston is so big, you'd have to drive for 45, 50 minutes to hit some of those restaurants. And in Birmingham, you can get pretty much anywhere in 20 minutes. So I'm going to say two different things. Number one, something that I really wasn't familiar with when we moved to Birmingham was the white barbecue sauce, as opposed to your traditional barbecue sauces. And it's like a vinegar base. It's good on chicken. It's good on pork. It's really good. So that was something that I wasn't familiar with. But then, as far as like a local restaurant, my wife and I, we love going to Automatic Seafood, which is just a couple of years old, maybe 4 years old. I don't know for sure, but I know their chef is a James Beard Award winner. We love a good seafood restaurant, and it's not too far from the house. So, but yeah, going out to eat and eating in Alabama and Birmingham, period, has been just top notch. We love it.
Well, now I'm hungry. All right. So for you growing up, your favorite basketball team to watch or be a fan of?
Well, I'm going to go with my Houston Rockets. But that's not the team that got me into basketball. I talk about the Rockets. I talk about the Clutch City, Hakeem Olajuwon, back-to-back champion Rockets. Maybe some of the best times I've ever had watching basketball with my dad and my friends growing up. And I was in high school when all that was going on. But, before that, it was Celtics, Lakers. That rivalry is what got me into basketball at a young age. And is still fascinated by all of it. Anytime something new comes out about it, I think I've heard all the stories, but I'll read it, I'll watch it. And those guys were, the reason why I fell in love with basketball.
All right. Your first jersey you owned as a kid. And it could be any sport.
I don't know if I owned too many jerseys. Was that a thing in the 80s as much? I think we probably had caricature T-shirts.
Yes, right. Yeah. The big Looney Tunes, and
that type of stuff. Anything Magic or Larry. Like I said, that rivalry was what got me into basketball. But anything with those two guys, is absolutely fascinating to me just because of what they did for basketball. Man, watching those guys play, growing up was something else. And, maybe the first actual jersey that I owned was Mario Ellie from the Houston Rockets. I remember getting that for Christmas.
It's a good one.
And loved what he brought to the team. So it wasn't always just about those big name guys. I had my Mario Ellie jersey and I wore it proudly. And, Mario was this guy that brought toughness and defense to the Rockets. And, I just remember loving watching those guys play. So outside of Magic and Larry and obviously, Michael Jordan, but, Hakeem Olajuwon and the Houston Rockets, those were some years.
All right. So if you had the opportunity, would you rather go in a rocket to space or submarine underwater?
Definitely a rocket to space. I think that I had a stretch there where I was in elementary school. I wanted to be an astronaut. I might never make it off the launch pad. I can't do roller coasters or anything, so I don't know why I'd say that. But if I could get there, I think that would be really cool.
All right. Camping or stay at a fancy hotel, like 5-star big time hotel?
I mean, I think, definitely the nice hotel. The camping is, I'll say this, I'll stay wherever to do something really neat. And as far as, so to me, it's about where you're going. So, if it means that I can go to the beach, but I got to stay at, a motel, I'm in. And really, I can't, those 5-star hotels are so hard to find. And we stay in great places on the road, Comfort Suites, Holiday Inn Express. So if I can go do that and it gives me more money to be able to go to whatever it is. I remember going to some really neat coaching clinics and staying at some really bad places so I could do it.
Yes.
And just doing what we can afford. But I know a nice hotel, man, that's hard to beat.
We've all had those road trips where you show up and you're like, Oh boy.
Yeah.
Here.
Now, are we camping, or are we, what do they call it, glamping? Are we staying in like a really nice motorhome, or what?
Oh, no, I think if we're going fancy hotel, I think we're rustically camping. I think it's the opposite.
I probably should say camping, because we made our players camp out as part of our boot camp last year. So for them, if they're here and we say 5-star hotel, they're not going to be happy to hear about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you say 5-star hotel, they're gonna be like, Coach, what we gotta up our road trip game here.
Yeah. I don't think I'd make 5-star hotel money, but
No.
I do make good, comfort suite money.
There you go.
All right. So last one, favorite class you either took as an undergrad or either of your master's degrees, just a class you remember you really enjoyed.
Oddly enough, the one I probably enjoyed the most was a freshman year kind of a writing class where we got to be a little bit creative. And that was a while back, but I enjoyed that class. And probably the one we talk about the most now that I'm out of college was, in my undergrad degree, everyone was required to take a fine art class, and all the good art classes were taken. So I ended up in dance at the University of Houston. And I just remember our final project having to be we had to do a presentation for the class, and my group was ambitious. We chose Thriller, and we had some great people in that group. I don't keep up with any of them, but just doing something like that is so far out of character for me. I'm not a dancer, but we got an A, and that's the class we probably talk about the most. But the favorite had to be freshman year writing.
So you didn't pick up any moves or anything, Coach? You got nothing.
No. Bad. It's really
I agree with you. I got nothing either. But well, Coach, we really appreciate it. We've had a couple system coaches on, and I feel like every time we talk to someone, we learn something new or kind of get a different perspective on it. So we're really appreciative of you jumping on. It was so fun to talk to you, and I encourage all of our listeners to kind of get to know your program and learn something new or improve on what they're doing. So thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me on.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the After the Timeout podcast, hosted by Todd Zazadil and Jon Flicky. For more show content and upcoming episodes, follow us on Twitter @AfterTheTimeout, or subscribe to our podcast for upcoming episodes. For show inquiries, you can email us at afterthetimeout@gmail.com. You can find all of our previous episodes on Anchor, Spotify, Breaker, Radio Public, Pocket Casts, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts by searching After the Timeout. We appreciate you listening. Tune in next time for more coaching content in-game, out of the game, and anything in between.